a big success. Recently won the Golden Globes and was nominated to 2025 Oscar. But first of all, I would like to know a bit more about your journey as a filmmaker and how your personal life influenced the creation of the animation.
Well, originally I wanted to just make films, not just animation, but felt kind of limited as a teenager in what kind of films I could do. And with animation, I had all this freedom, taking my time and doing things my own way and creating these fantastical stories. So that's where I focused on and did at first like these hand-drawn short films, but then I wasn't really good at drawing. So one of the films I did back then is about a cat who's afraid of water, and which is later has been adapted into Flow, the feature version. But then, yeah, I made a bunch of more shorts, which I did in school, like after the classes on my free time, and some of them got into some film festivals, and I won some awards, and that allowed me to get some funding. So I decided to rather just to get the funding for my films and do them like full time, rather than going into a university to study filmmaking, because we didn't even have an animation school back then in Latvia. Now there still isn't an animation school, but there's at least a program and that you can do it like partially. At least for me, the best way to learn is by doing stuff and learning the hard way by making mistakes as well. But that's where you learn the most. And then I did my first feature film, Away, which I did by myself. Basically the same way I worked in those short films, and that was like the biggest success so far. And I got to like travel to all these bigger festivals and met all these producers, which allowed me to kind of then work on a bigger scale to have a bigger budget and work with the proper team. So I'm always looking for that personal aspect when telling the story. So Away was about a character alone on an island, and I was basically making the film alone. And now Flow is my first time working with a team, and it's about a cat who's used to be very independent, and now it has to figure out how to trust others and how to work together. So it's again kind of about making the film itself, and so it's always I'm looking for something that I understand, and there's like that holds my interest. In this case, for 5 years. It can't be just the job that I'm doing. It has to be something really feel passionate about. And but yeah, it's I want to tell stories visually and through the music and sounds and animation, and so all these films don't have dialogue. So that just to me that doesn't feel like a big challenge. That's something I feel more comfortable with. Like actually using dialogue would be more complicated, and just trying find my way through. I'm still learning, and with Flow I learned so much, and but yeah, it's still an ongoing process.
Flow was also nominated for Best International Film, not 2025 Oscar, and which, by the way, is the same category where a Brazilian film was nominated. I'm Still Here, and I wanted to know if have you seen the film like, I'm Still Here, and how do you see your competitors in this category?
I actually just saw the film, I think 2 days ago,
Mhm.
in New York, where I'm now. But yeah, actually before seeing it, I did a panel in Palm Springs festival where I was on stage with Walter Solis, and I met him there. And I'm such a huge fan of his work, and especially Motorcycle Diaries was like a huge influence on my first film, Away, which is also about like a character riding a motorcycle in these in these landscapes. So I got to meet him, and which was so great. And he'd seen Flow, and he was very kind about it and said very nice things, and it was just a great experience to me. And as I just saw I'm Still Here, which was really amazing, and I was very moved, and it was such a strong film.
At what point in your life you realized that filmmaking was like your true calling? And was there like in a specific moment when you knew you wanted to compete for big awards like Oscar or Golden Globes, or it just happened?
Well, I make films because I enjoy making them. I love the process. I love just sitting down and creating stuff, and through filmmaking, I can express things that I can't express any other way. I've been listening to a lot of David Lynch recently, and he's talking about that he makes these films to kind of express these things, and you can't express them with words. It's more kind of emotional and abstract, and it's my way of kind of also understanding myself and kind of learning things about the world. It's very therapeutic for me. So that's the primary reason why I do it. Of course, you hope that the film will be seen and recognized, and it really means a lot for Latvia in this case because it's the first Latvian film to ever be nominated for any of these awards, and it just helps us to find an audience, which is very important because it's so competitive nowadays, and this has really helped us to like reach this global audience, and to me, like, this whole awards, like, the best part is like traveling and meeting all these filmmakers like Walter Solis, and getting to talk with them and making friends, and that's just a really cool part because we were like in our studio for years working on the film, and now like it's like completely opposite. Like, I'm on stage in front of thousands of people, or on TV where millions of people watch, and it's like really strange, and to kind of give these speeches, and to which I wasn't really used to, so I had to learn that and kind of practice. But yeah, it's really fun. But it's also very exhausting. You're always traveling, always jet lagged, and doing like now hundreds of interviews, but yeah, it's like very fun, very exhausting, very intense. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
And how was the process, like the production process of Flow, like the creating of the story? I thought that you were working with Blender, 3D Blender,
Sure.
and can you tell us a bit more about the challenge that you encountered along the way?
Yeah, well, this film was not made in a typical way. Not just the story, but the way it's made is very unique, and it's a collaboration of three studios in Latvia, France, and Belgium. Although we did most of the stuff in Latvia, where I'm from, so we established a studio for this film. It's a very small studio, just basically one room. I'd never even worked in the studio before as an animator, and now I had to be in charge of a team, and sometimes, like, not knowing the right way of doing things can be helpful. You end up finding original solutions, or kind of doing things your own way can be like, I think this has kind of helped the film to be noticed because we're not trying to be like everyone else, because I think people want to see something new and fresh and unexpected. But yeah, it took 5 years. Includes like writing the script and looking for funding, and then building that studio. So that's like a big part of it. But then the actual production was fairly quick. It was less than a year, which is very fast for an animated film. And so usually animated films are done using storyboards, where you draw the images of what the film will look like as these quick sketches. But I don't use this technique, and instead I kind of create everything directly in the 3D software. In this case, it's Blender, which, for those who don't know, is a free software that anyone can download and use. That means that like any kid can now has access to these tools that these big films shown in theaters are being made with, and I think that's very exciting. That we're going to see a lot of more independent animated films, and also this allowed us to make it cheaper because the budget was really tiny compared to like the US films. Like some of the like Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks films, they cost $200 million. Our film cost 3.5 million, so it's like, I don't know how many times, like 50, 60 times less than those films. So using these free tools is really helpful. And I was telling about like my process of creating the images in 3D, and I basically the process is where I create this environment and I can explore it with the camera. I can walk around and make discoveries. It's almost like on a real live action set where a director can arrive and take a viewfinder and discover things, and it's very spontaneous and intuitive, and it usually animation is more rigid and very planned and very strict, but our process was much more fluid, and this is necessary because I want to have these very long shots, which go on for minutes. The camera keeps flowing and following these characters. So instead from, if you have a wide shot, you're not cutting to a close-up, you're moving the camera towards it, or you're moving the characters. So I wanted to create this very complicated choreography with the characters and the camera, which really creates a very immersive feeling that you are inside this world. Because every time you make a cut, it kind of reminds you you're watching a film. And I feel like this is something that hasn't been explored as much in animation as it could be. And I think that's part of the appeal, what makes it different from most animated films, that it has that almost documentary kind of sensibility, that you can feel the camera shaking a little bit as if a real person is holding it. And what is unique about this film is that I also write the music myself, and I write it while I'm still writing the script, which is really early. Usually music is done at the last stage when everything is finished. But I need to do it early because the music really guides how this film will develop, what happens to the characters and the story. So many of these ideas were really like influenced by music. I don't want to spoil the story for people who haven't seen it, but there's a scene with the cat and the bird towards the end of the film, which is very like climactic. And that was really inspired by the music of the film, where yeah, I had this music and it evoked these images in my mind. And I didn't really study music, I just write it electronically on my computer, and I don't play instruments myself. So once I'd done these initial kind of sketches, we brought on another composer, Richard Zaljup, also from Latvia, who is much more experienced than me, and then we would record everything with real instruments, and we had a big orchestra, and we played all these also solo instruments like marimbas and trumpets and everything, and but we also used some synthesizers, which I also wanted to do, not to have like a traditional score with just the orchestra. I wanted it to sound very unique and special, so we used some analog synthesizers as well.
I saw a video of when Flo was nominated to Oscar, and you were watching with, I assume that was your dog. Would you say that your dog was an influence for the film when you were thinking about the story and the characters, or was just a natural coincidence?
Well, I've had both cats and dogs growing up, and 2 cats and 2 dogs, and yeah, it all started when I was in high school. I had these cats, and I made a short film inspired by them, which was then adapted into Flow, the feature version. But yeah, those characters were inspired by my real pets, and yeah, so I knew them quite well. I didn't have to do too much research. I understand them, I think, quite well. And even though it's a story about a cat, I love both cats and dogs. And yeah, unfortunately, I never had a capybara or a lemur. But yeah, we did go to a zoo to study them.
To finish, I wanted to teach you how to say a phrase in Portuguese. We don't have the film yet, but here we say em breve nos cinemas when we want to say coming soon.
Em breve nos cinemas.